Welcome to Suffolk Matters, where all of Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News, opinions, and insights you won't hear anywhere else. Here's your host, the president of New York's largest independent union, Suffolk AME's Dan Levler.
Welcome to another edition of Suffolk Matters on Walk 97.5 and 94.3 The Shark, where Suffolk County meets the men and women of Suffolk AME. News and views you can't hear anywhere else. So this morning, my guest is Theresa Regnante. She is the president and CEO of United Way, Long Island. Good morning, Theresa.
Hey, good morning, Dan.
So, United Way, that's probably a very familiar name to people, and there's a lot of ground we have to cover here just to, get people up to speed about, what we're talking about and why. But maybe we can just start with you just giving an overview of your organization, what it means to the whole of the United Way, and your role, your history, and what it is you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And good morning, and hope everybody, all the AME people are well and safe. And I think that we've had a great history and partnership with the county and the AME. So it's terrific to be with you this morning. The United Way of Long Island is a local and independent organization here in Deer Park. There are 1,700 United Ways in the country, but we operate just under the same brand, United Ways of, whatever community, but we're local and independent and governed by a board of directors here on Long Island. So there is no sort of mothership, if you will, that I report to. I report to a local board here, which is really important because especially in a disaster and the pandemic that we have today, we can quickly roll out our operations and do the things that make sense to Long Island rather than maybe do what might make sense to a national organization that doesn't really impact the local result and to quickly operationalize. So that's a really important distinction, about the United Way. Some people think it's, somewhere else. And no, it's here, local, independent, 50 board members, and not a lot of labor leaders and folks who just really care about the region. And our mission is really to respond to Long Islanders and fight for families in the space of education, financial stability, and health. Those are the three pillars of the work that we do. And that really then branches off into 100 different organizations that we fund as a united solution together, that we can create the impact that we make in the area of education, income, and financial stability. And in addition to that, United Way has a lot of programs directly. Our Fuel Fund program to help people with emergency heating assistance. We have a scholarship fund that we help 100 students go to college every year. We've got certainly a lot of relationship in the space with our government partners, and when there ever is a disaster or a pandemic, we're able to pull together a team and impact the community and impact targeted areas in communities by the partnerships that we have, to get people back on their feet.
No, that's all great stuff. And, I think it's important to mention, when you look at nonprofits and what they do for people, there's a way to rate them to say, whether or not they're doing a good job. And the metric I always look at is, the percentage of the dollar that's donated that actually goes into these programs, like what gets carved out for administrative expenses and what goes to actually providing services. So, and as I understand it, you guys have an excellent rating.
Yeah, we have, our overhead is 15%. So 85% of any dollar, 85 cents out of any dollar goes directly to a program impact. And we run the operation on a 15% overhead. And the reason and the way, honestly, we do that as well is that our staffing pattern is very lean. We've got about 35 people employed by the United Way of Long Island, obviously for the whole region, and we have a board of directors of about 50 people. And together, they help us open up doors, talk to people, and we're able to gain some traction with some very, very big foundations to bring in large dollars into the region of which then helps us keep our overhead really low. I mean, we have to raise about $17, $18 million a year. And if we were raising that money by, everybody giving $5, we would have to have a much different footprint as it relates to our staffing pattern. But we're able to really bring in big federal grants to the region. We've been operating a grant which is about $5 or $6 million. Another housing grant that's another $3 million. And so we're able to do that, which helps then keep our overhead costs low. Because raising money is, it's a people business, and you have to have people out there hitting the streets, talking to people and stewarding donors well, and it can be costly if, in fact, you're not bringing in, $1 million gifts. So we really work very, very hard to strike that balance and keep our overhead at that, 15%. It's important. It's probably the most important thing that we could deliver to a community.
Sure. Well, I guess at the end of the day, if you're taking in money and it's not going out to the programs, then why exist? So that's actually phenomenal to have 85% of all the money that comes in going directly into programs. And the way I see it, I think there's probably two major things that we can talk about today. And obviously there's a lot of ground to cover, but just overall, I get a sense that, it's very important for our listeners today to understand, if they're in a tight spot, United Way probably could help in some way, and it would be great that they can reach out to you and see if there's any assistance available to them. And then the other aspect is, those people that are fortunate enough to, to maybe have a little bit extra. We've had so many people not working through this crisis. And then there are other people that are working through this crisis, and again, just using our AME members as examples, they were essential frontline workforce. Your government has to be there for you in a crisis. And so they worked, every day. But they take a little bit of what they earn and kick in to help other people through programs like the United Way. So, just starting with that first point, I think it's really good to get out there. If somebody wanted to contact the United Way, become familiar with your programs, either because they need assistance or because they want to help someone out, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
So the easiest thing to do is dial 211 on the phone. And if you're dialing outside, of the county, you can dial 1-888-774-7633. Or if you're, a big on the web, you can go to 211longisland.org. So United Way invests in an information and referral service that is a phone and online, and it's 24/7. And it's a multilingual helpline. So 365 days a year, someone's answering that phone when it rings. And there's a database of about 10,000 program entries for Long Island in terms of routing people to services. So a lot of people calling for emergency financial assistance now. We've gotten over 6,000 calls in the past 3 months. A lot of individuals calling for financial assistance, food insecurity, how do I pay my rent, how do I, who do I call because, this phone at this government office isn't working, I need my driver's license, I've got to go to DSS, the list goes on. So we have a taxonomy of inventory of every single call. And so we can pinpoint in a region who's calling about what. And it's really a very, very important tool because then we can go to government and say, listen, I'm not sure if you know, but the call volume in the past 3 months has been about, and even a lot of people have called about food shortages or shortage of items, or they can't find things and where to go. So this directory helps people route to services, and especially is very, very important for people who are older, who are in their home, who might need assistance and don't necessarily have a caregiver to help and are used to using the phone and are not going to go to a computer. Normally, at 80 years old, potentially you're not necessarily using that as the communication tool. You're going to use the phone. So this is a really important aspect of our work. So 211 drives sort of the engine of all the referrals that people need help. They call that number, and then they're given 3 or 4 referrals to an organization who is up to date in the directory. So the directory, since it's federally licensed, it has to be up to date every 6 months. So it's not a paper directory where you print it tomorrow and then the next day, there's an agency that might not operate that program or not funded for that program, and someone calls and they're frustrated and, and they go the roundabout of the mill. This is a very active and fluid database, and we've got people 24/7 in a multi-language capacity answering that phone. So that is the best way for someone to reach out and to get the support and help and to get routed to the best outcome possible.
Oh, that's great, and I think that's very important. As people run into these various, you never know when you're going to be in need of help. So knowing that you have this resource at your disposal, I think, is going to be very good for people. And you guys sit as an umbrella over a number of organizations. They're all 501 nonprofits, if I'm not mistaken, and generally speaking, they focus on various different needs. But there's a number of programs I'm aware of, and I think are great. But I'd like you to give us your take on some key initiatives that you guys are really proud of.
So I think the place to start is there's about maybe 90 or so community partner organizations that we continue to give grants to. And that money that those agencies receive from us pretty much derives from the workplace giving campaigns that are run throughout Nassau and Suffolk County. So when people give a gift to the United Way, unrestricted, so they're not designating their gift, they're giving their gift directly to the United Way, to now what we've branded United Solutions, and support us as the U.S. to make sure that people understand that their money should stay local on Long Island and impact great things happening here, especially now. So when we take a look at, the big name organizations like Island Harvest and Long Island Cares, who have the lion's share responsibility for food banks, they have to be supported well in order for the food pantry system to be able to receive what they're able to get, right? So there's like 600 probably pantries between those two organizations. That's a really big engine, and we fund both organizations, Long Island Cares and Island Harvest. We think they do, great work. They have great impact. And so from a food insecurity space, that's really important. And we could work with those two organizations in terms of if they're propping up another pantry system, let's say in North Bellport or in Gordon Heights, we could specifically give a grant to that specific operation to make sure that happens for that community. And so we sort of are in partnership together, knowing the needs, community by community, across Suffolk County, across Nassau County, and can make those decisions each and every day. And that's what we do with the dollars that come from the workplace campaigns. And I want to say to the AME employees, you've always been very helpful and supportive. And this year we're hoping to do things a little bit differently inside of the county to get more people participating who can participate. But we think that if most people look to potentially give $1 or $2 a week out of their paycheck, knowing that 85 cents of that dollar is stewarded well, stays on Long Island, and does something really fantastic in a community to help people, we think that that's a very good outcome. So the food insecurity is very, very important, especially during this time. People who are on, agencies are on the front lines, with 100 families a day. I spent a lot of time at Pronto on Long Island and Brentwood, at Adelante, Housing Help, Gerald Ryan Outreach in Wyandanch. Every day those organizations that we fund for the past 3 months have been essential, just as we all have, on this call, and responding to the needs of people, whether it's, foreclosure prevention, rental assistance. Those are the things for families that are really key. Having the roof over your head and being secure, making sure there's enough, stables in the household to get through. If in fact, you're on unemployment and it took a long time to get that support, there were families on these food lines that their cars were pretty high-end cars, Dan. They weren't, your dad's old Oldsmobile.
Right. Yeah.
I saw a lot of things for the first time, and when unemployment hits 15%, which it is in this region, there's a pandemic of pain and assistance that is there for a long period of time. So we know we're in this for the long haul. These disasters and recovery, even if, Long Island and New York State doesn't see a reinfection, which unfortunately, today I read a report that 37,000 new cases in the United States, the highest ever. We've got states, California, Florida now that are posting 5,000 new cases a day. It's really devastating. I think that we've in New York State been locked down. The governor trying to really do what he can, keep everybody safe and at home, and now we're potentially with the threat very early on. They're looking at August as being a possibility of a problem. And we just got to be ready for it. I mean, it's our business to be ready for it. Like it's your business with the AME and the members to be on call and be essential. We got to fight through it together. Each and every day in our network of agencies are out on the front lines doing that work, responding to the needs of people and families. That it changes by the hour. So we're in it, Dan, for as long as we need to be, just as we did in Sandy, Superstorm Sandy. It's 8 years now in October, and we are actually, the United Way is working with the county in a home for a Mastic Shirley resident, actually Mastic Beach, to put that homeowner back in their home. The CO probably will be sometime October, November, but we've sort of rebuilt about 1,000 projects, and we've done a lot with the county on trying to get people back home. And we're with our last client, which is really extraordinary, but it's 8 years. But so we think this pandemic the same. It will be a long time for people to recover financially from this devastation.
Yeah, and just tying that thread back together, so you have the 211 number that people can just pick up their phone, dial 211. They can jump on the web, 211longisland.org, and get information to you, and donations that go to you, those resources can go where they're needed. So, and in speaking to groups like Long Island Cares and Island Harvest, there's a special component right now that makes this even more difficult in that, there are a number of kids that relied on physical in-person school simply to get a meal, right? Things were difficult before, and now school's closed and, and parents unemployed. So, the need is great out there. And I just want to remind our listeners, we're talking to Theresa Regnante. She's the president and CEO of United Way Long Island, which is a locally focused group making sure that, resources get to people in need through various programs. And let's talk, I guess, a little bit about COVID-19 specifically. Like we know, that's the talk of the day, so to speak. And you're right, very recent numbers put us at over 37,000 new infections in the United States. And, there's concerns for our region, what has happened, what could happen next. And, so what are programs that you guys are operating, and what are you doing to, shore up for this, potential second wave?
Yeah, so operationally, we were able to stand up remote pretty quickly, probably, in 2 weeks. And, it's because we have the capacity as, a fiscal steward of a lot of different grants to be able to move our finance team, into that space. But what certainly is very difficult is on the fundraising side of the engine to come into a community and ask, everyday people for support when the pandemic is so widespread was really difficult. So we had probably early on in the first month, by mid-April, already had $1 million of new revenue coming in. And this was from foundations, from the Bank of America Foundation, from actually the New York Jets and their ownership. They gave $250,000 to us, as did the Bank of America. Very, very large gifts that really helped on the front end. Bethpage Federal Credit Union stepped up, Flushing Bank. The financial industry really stepped up in a way. They had a little bit more resiliency to the pandemic than some other industries. And we were able to run a program, Born United, and raise money for a lot of moms in hospitals, March, April, May, giving birth in the hospitals all across Long Island. Again, coming home to unemployment situations, so we gave a lot of gift cards. We probably distributed over $600,000 of gift cards in the first 2 months through a network through the Department of Labor in Suffolk. We had links in Suffolk County for folks to, while they were applying for benefits, to get gift cards from us directly, as well in Nassau County, and standing up, the healthcare response of people taking home food. We helped over 5,000 healthcare responders take home food to their homes at night when they left their shifts, which was really, really important. They were very inundated during the day. Most of those folks didn't probably have time to take a bite of pizza in a 12-hour day, so we thought we'd, make sure that they went home with something, which was really great. And also our Born United initiative, helping, moms in hospitals leave with the essentials that they needed. So that was all, in the front end in the first 3 months. And quite frankly, if there's another wave that hits, we're going to have to really now, we're ready from a place of operations, and we'll probably stay operationally in a half remote, half our organization and our staff, and then half not, to just make sure there's no disruption at all, to switch something on and then off, keep it more fluid. And we are continuing to raise the money that we know that the region's going to need, and have moved into a safe-at-home strategy for seniors. We've been funded through community block grant dollars from 4 towns in Suffolk County, and waiting on a big grant from the town of Hempstead. But we've got to pay attention to the seniors in the second wave, as I don't think we paid attention to them as well the first wave of the pandemic. Keeping people in their homes and safe and healthy, and the oldest among us, to make sure that they do not become victims of this virus, are going to be really, really important. So we're gearing up right now. July 1st, we'll kick off in 4 towns the project, and make sure in the hotspot areas, in the COVID hotspot areas of especially, North Bayshore, Central Islip, Brentwood, where you saw the very, very high numbers.
Sure.
Amityville, Wyandanch, that we are ready with a safe-at-home strategy and a network of services with people to check in on those seniors and make sure that they stay in. And that we stop the spread of the infection at the rate that it was for the elderly, a little bit differently than maybe the first time. So we're hoping we don't have to get to round 2, but if we get to round 2, Dan, I think we're much more pinpointed in our approach in terms of the services that we deliver, and the United Way of Long Island will certainly, at the top of the priority, stay connected to people over the age of 65 throughout the region.
I think that's very important, and another thing, we talk a lot about, these potential large donors, these grants that come in, but that's not all that you operate on. And to some degree, it's regular, everyday folks that have an understanding of your mission, that care about their community and want to contribute a little bit, but they, they're not sure where and they're not sure how. And United Way of Long Island is a great place to go because you have the ability, one, through the 211 calls and the 211longisland.org website, to be able to find out where the needs are and, put those resources where they're most needed. So I do think it's very important that, anyone listening, if you've been working through this crisis, if, you've been getting by and doing okay, you definitely know somebody that isn't.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The $100 donor, the $50 donor to our, UnitedWayLI.org/United Together, going to our website, they are critical in the response because there's a lot of people in this region who could give at that level and who have been giving at that level. Brookhaven Laboratories, their employees raised $30,000 in 2 days.
Wow.
And the company matched it. And there were a lot of $50, $25, $100, contributions. And that is the base of the United Way's platform, and it always has been. It's been everyday people who are able to give, whether out of their paycheck, a couple of dollars, a few dollars a week continually, to come in and support the network of services and the work that we have to do and pivot. When we have to pivot for a pandemic, we've got the support there to do that, and then we kick in at a higher level to make overtures to grants to bring in, $100,000 of those type of grants into the region. But that doesn't happen each and every day. What happens each and every day is local people on Long Island caring about their community, their neighbors, and where they live. And that has been the basis and the success of our fundraising platform for our 55 years. And I think that if people, like you said, if they can, when we come back into the workplace in some sort of format and you can give through payroll deduction, terrific. And if you can now go to our website, which is UnitedWayLI.org/United Together, and give a gift, that would be so greatly appreciated and helpful, just to get us as a region of people through, and so people can rely and continue to rely on, the United Way to be the response that we need to be.
Sure. And, you talk about returning to the workplace, and you talk about, the world has changed. There are some jobs that are going to be performed differently in the future. There's going to be new needs, especially as government starts focusing on infrastructure and starts trying to build back up the economy through building. That's why programs like Opportunity Long Island are so important. That's another program that you guys are involved in that help create apprenticeships for people to get into some of the construction trades and, help rebuild our economy, help rebuild our infrastructure, and they would be in a position to give back also. So, some of the programs that you guys work with, they're designed to help someone through a time of need and put them in a position where they can support the program later on in their life.
Yeah, Dan, the investment in jobs, apprenticeship, in training. We do a lot of work with Department of Labor in Suffolk with unemployment training programs, construction programs, solar programs, try to get people to get into plumbing, electrician. All those positions are so valuable, so important, well-paid positions with good benefits, and we have a training center that just does that. And, that during this time as well, coming out of a crisis, it becomes even more important to ramp up those training functions to help people who potentially aren't going back to the position that they were going to have another opportunity of a good quality job with good benefits to be able to stay here and, support their family and to stay in their home.
Yeah, and, again, it comes back to something you said right at the beginning, keeping these dollars local, whether it's through giving to the United Way of Long Island or keeping dollars local by providing people with opportunities to, improve their situation and buy and spend, be employed and buy and spend locally as well. Because, the region supporting itself is critical.
Absolutely. There's no one that's going to help lift this boat. We're on this island together, and we've got to stay together. So, partnerships, government, labor, private industry, not-for-profits, we've got to figure it out together. And I think we need